Hey everyone, welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. My name is Cody Seibert, and in this video, I am going to be showing you how to build this little Pokemon Pokedex app in React. So when you load it up, it basically has a little red square that says welcome to the app, and you can type in a Pokemon name here like Pikachu, click search, and that will do a request to a backend, get some data, and then use that data to display the Pokemon's image here. So I could change that to like Charizard if I wanted to. And of course, this is all using a React router. So you see, as I change the Pokemon, the URL up here changed. So I could actually go up here and type in like Pikachu if I wanted to, and that'll load the app and load Pikachu. And if I type in some bogus Pokemon that actually catches that exception and navigates the route to not found and displays a different component here. So that is what we're going to be building in this video. If you are not already a subscriber of Web Dev Junkie, be sure to click that subscribe button below. Again, my name is Cody Seibert, and I'm looking forward to showing you how to build this. All right, so let me give you an overview of how this project is set up. I use Create a React App to build up the generic React project, and I went ahead and deleted some of the stuff, such as the background tasks and the unit tests. But there are a couple of things that I have set up for us already because it did take a little bit of time to read through docs and get that get those set up. So if you're interested in using like Redux and Redux Thunk, I do have a video out there that you can watch and I will walk you through. But for right now, I'm just going to show you the main entry point. We have a provider, which is basically what you need to set up Redux. And inside of that provider, you nest something called a connected router. And that is so that you connect your Redux store to your React router. And that's useful when you need to get stuff such as the parameters from state and other things like that. And then for setting up the store, if you're familiar with Redux, you create a store down here. The first argument is going to be your root reducer, which in this case we have a Pokemon reducer, which is going to hold some Pokemon data. And we have our router here, which is needed to be able to connect your React router to your store. You don't have to do this, but I think it's important to have your router be inside of your store. What else is in here that's important? This just takes a while to figure out how to set up. History is what's needed to actually like change the history URL, so the path in your URL, and that is pulled in and passed to the connect router. What else is important? We have our app.js, which we're probably going to be using for routing different components. Pokemon reducer, we're going to try to use the Dux style, which is where you have like your actions reducer, your async actions in here, or what are they called? Action creators or whatever they're called. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. If you are not too familiar with that Create React app, be sure to check it out. And again, also check out my Redux Thunk video. But let's just try to build out a little like Pokedex app that I showed earlier. So if we are on the base URL of our app, we just want to show maybe some red text here or red little div and then say like welcome to the app. So first off, let's make a component called welcome JSX, and I'm going to just create a React component here. There we go. And that is going to say welcome to the React Pokedex. Okay, so we made a component called welcome, and we want to use that here. So in React, you could just simply import it like so. Actually, let me go down to this one. And now when our app loads, it's going to hopefully display that. It does, but the text is black. So we want to go to our app CSS here, and we want to make sure that our app's color is white probably. Let's see if that makes it any different. Probably not, because it's an H1. So let's do this right now. This is just temporary. Okay, so welcome to the React Pokedex. So again, what we wanted to do is inside of the app, let me close some stuff. We want to have a red little box that's kind of centered in the middle of the screen. which is going to switch different views based on what URL we're at. So using React Router, we're going to switch out components. So we'll see that in a second. But inside of here, we can go ahead and add a class called like Pokedex. Sometimes my autocomplete doesn't work. I think it's like when I'm actually recording. Maybe my CPU is getting used too much. So if I say Pokedex and make a div and pull that in there, we can go ahead and style that Pokedex and go into our app CSS. And I want to just say background color is red, width is 500 pixels, height is 300 pixels, and give it a border radius of maybe 10 pixels or 20 pixels or something, maybe padding of 20 pixels. So that should give us a nice little like card looking thing. Okay. And maybe even a box shadow. So 5 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, white. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, so that looks... Is that how you do it? All right. So this will be our little thing that we're going to be doing. Now I want to center this to the center of the page, and you can do that using Flexbox. So I do believe I did already leave a style for Flexbox. You know, I might have gotten rid of that. So I'm going to make a style and call it center. And I'm going to go ahead and say that's display flex. And then you can say align items center. And there's another one, I forgot what it's called. I might have to look this up. I totally forgot what it's called. So flex box align vertically. What is the term for it? Align? No, let's see. It's justify contents. And that could be center. So now if I were to put the center class on any of the parent elements, I think it'll just go ahead and center it for us. Like I say, center on this, and now if I go back, our Pokédex should be centered. The issue we're seeing here is that this div is probably not full width. So if I go, look how center is not full width here. So let me just go ahead and make sure that this is a height of 100%. This might be a little hacky just to add that in. Okay, so now we have a little Pokedex thing that's in the center of the page. And what we're trying to do is we want to basically have an input box down here. And if the user types into it, it's going to do a request to an API that I found here. This is pokeapi.co. And they have an endpoint that you can hit to get back information about a particular Pokemon. So I'm going to say, I'm going to grab this. And if we want information like Pikachu, we can make that request and it gives us back some JSON that tells us the abilities. Actually tells us a lot of stuff about the Pokemon. More than I actually wanted to see. So what's going on here? It has like abilities, has forms, game indices, and we're not going to be using all of these. Like you could probably make a lot of cool stuff using this API, but we're going to keep this really simple. All right, anyway, I'm getting kind of sidetracked. So we want to have an input box here. And when you search, we want to change this view to display either like the Pokemon was not found or actually display information about the Pokemon. So let's start with adding an input box so we can come back and make this like nice and styled later. So here, I'll just say, I'll make a class called, I'll make a form, which will have an input and placeholder, enter a Pokemon name, ... So that should give us an input box that shows up somewhere in this page. And then we probably want a submit button. So if I add a new button and say type submit, and I will say search. Now we should have input box and a button where we can actually search for that Pokemon. And right now, if you click it, it's going to submit the form. So we definitely don't want that to happen. So if I say on submit and add a callback method here to just prevent it from doing that. So the technique is e.prevent default. Now when I click this, it won't just reload the page, hopefully. Okay, so now we're getting into the realms of dispatching actions in Redux. and using Thunk for asynchronous actions. But what we want to do is when a user types into this input box and then click search, we're going to fire off our dispatch in action, okay? But to keep track of what the value is of what the person typed in, we need to hold some state inside this app component. So one way you can do this, since we're using functional React, is I can just get the use state hook, and I need to import it from React, so I'll just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to keep track of the name. So when the user types into the input box, we're going to set the name of the name state variable, and I can do that down here. If I say on change, we could just go ahead and call set name. Actually, that won't work. We need to actually get the event, and we need to call set name on e.currentTarget.value. Okay, so that will, oh, I'm sorry, I need to put that on the input box, not the button. So now as I type into the input box, it's going to keep firing off this event, which will update my name variable. And just to kind of visualize that, I could put the name inside the button just to kind of show you all what's going on. And as I type, so Pikachu or whatever, notice that the name is being stored in local state and it's being displayed in the button. Okay, so let's think, what are we trying to do? When the person tries to submit this form, we need to try to dispatch a Redux action, okay? So we have a hook called use dispatch that we can bring in. Go ahead and click the auto import one. And that'll give us a function that we can call called dispatch. And when we try to submit this form, all we need to do is dispatch an action. So we haven't actually created the action yet. So we kind of need to do that. Now the action we're going to create, if we go to our Pokemon reducer, we can go ahead using the ducks convention is create a new action here. So I'll say load Pokemon. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. We need an action, right? So in this case, it's going to be an asynchronous Thunk action. So if I export const, I don't know, load Pokemon, and that's going to be a function that takes in the name of the Pokemon. And with Thunk, you can return a function, since we're using the Thunk middleware, which has the argument dispatch as a first argument. So then we can just fire off other actions, do async requests and stuff like that. It's kind of confusing, but hopefully it'll make sense when we actually start working with it. So we want to use, what are we trying to do here, right? When the user clicks the button here, we dispatch an action, which is going to call this function, okay? So down here, I can say dispatch load Pokemon, and I need to pass in the name that we've typed into the input box. And when we do that, that is going to call this function here, and we need to actually do like an API request. So using fetch, which is built into the browser, I can call this same endpoint like we did in our browser, but instead of hard coding Pikachu, I could pass a name. And this is going to return a promise. So I need to actually like take the response object and convert it to a JSON. And then we could simply either do promise chaining or await, async await, whatever you would rather do. I'm going to do promise chaining just because. But when we get a response back, we want to basically keep track of that Pokemon information, okay? So inside of our initial state, we're not keeping track of a Pokemon, but we can. So I'll say Pokemon null. And now we could set that down here using another dispatch action. So let's see. So we're going to get the JSON response, and then we need to dispatch another action, okay? So I'm going to dispatch set Pokemon, and that's going to pass in Pokemon. Okay, we don't have a set Pokemon function yet, so what I can do is export another function. Actually, I don't need to export this. This could be internal. And this one needs to return, since we're doing action creators, this needs to return an object that has a type. So I'll say set Pokemon. We haven't defined it yet. And payload. So in this case, payload is going to be Pokemon. And when you're doing the ducks convention, you need to declare these as strings. So typically the approach is the name of your app, so Pokedex slash, and then the name of your reducer, so Pokemon, and then the actual action that you're invoking, so set Pokemon. Okay, so so again, recap. You type into the input box, we're keeping track of the state. You click the submit button, we dispatch a load Pokemon event using a load or using an action creator function. That is a Thunk async function that's going to make a request to a backend using the name. We get back some JSON, which happens to be the Pokemon object. We then save that into our state using another action creator function. And now in the reducer, we need to actually keep track of that. So if the type is case set Pokemon, we need to just update the state and set Pokemon equal to action.payload. Okay, so pretty confusing. A lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but you get used to it once you've used it enough. Just to kind of visualize that, I have a Redux plugin installed. And now if I were to type in Pikachu and press search, notice that it dispatched an action called Pokedex Pokemon set Pokemon. And that set my Pokemon state from null to this object here. In fact, if I go to state, I can kind of dive into that, where we have all of that information that was returned from the backend. Okay, kind of hard to see because my window is kind of small, but we got like name, we got ID, we got sprites. These are like images that we can display. And the second thing I should show is the network request. When we actually click that submit button, it did a request to that API. It gave us back a 200 response code, and then we get back all the information that we're just storing in our state. So hopefully that is all straightforward at this point. All right, so another interesting thing is that if you were to type in a bad Pokemon, so like just some random characters, if I search for this, notice that the backend is going to return a 404 error, and our promise chain, we're not catching anything, so nothing really happens. I'm not sure if that was like old error text. Click the token in. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, but what we can do here is we could catch and then do something. So if there's an error, we could probably have another reducer or action creator called like set error. And that could be error, payload would be error, set error. And one thing you'll notice about Redux is that a lot of this stuff is really like boilerplate. You got to type in a lot of stuff just to change a very simple state variable. In fact, we don't really need to keep track of error. So I'll set I guess error is fine, whatever. So now in our reducer, if we get a set error action that's fired, we just need to update error to action.payload. There's probably ways to clean this up so the code's not so like repetitive, but this will get the job done. So we need to make sure we call set error. So inside of our catch statement, we could just simply dispatch another event or action and make sure I call that error. So why are we doing this? What does this help us do? Well, basically, we want to route to something different based on if we have errors or not. In fact, I don't even know if I need to keep track of the error. I might be just jumping ahead of myself. But anyway, so let's say there is an error, right? We want to actually change the view to a page that says like not found. So I'm going to say not found, or Pokemon not found.jsx. Here we go, Pokemon not found. And I will say the Pokemon of placeholder. Or how about the Pokemon you searched for? And then we could say H2, Pikachu. We're going to replace that in a second. Try again. The Pokemon you search for, okay. Maybe I should say unknown Pokemon. Try again. Okay, so what am I trying to do here? Let's take a step back. We are trying to basically have different routes, and if you go to a Pokemon that's not found, we want to navigate the browser to a different route. So one thing we need to do is we need to add this switch statement here. So with React Router, you can do a switch, and inside the switch, you can have different routes. So I will do, let's see, route, and you can set that to a path. So I'm going to say like not found will be the path. I will say exact. Maybe I should do a slash in front of it. And I could give it a component. So I could say Pokemon not found. And then otherwise, I think you can do like a default route. So route, I don't think you give it a path. You could just say component. I might have to look this up. I don't truly remember how to do this one. All right, let's see if this actually works. So since there was no route found, I think it falls back to this welcome route. But now if I go to not found, like if I were actually go up here and type in not found, notice that it prints out unknown Pokemon Pikachu, try again. So the path or route that we add into our URL is going to change the behavior of this, like inside the switch statement. And you can use like nested routes and stuff, but we're not going to be covering that in this little video. So again, what are we trying to do? Like when you search for a Pokemon that's not found, you want to navigate to this not found path, okay? So in a reducer, instead of saying set error, you could actually just dispatch. There is a helper method called push, and you can push the route that you want to navigate to. And we might, I'm probably going to refactor set error to something else. I guess we can keep it just in case we need that error, but I don't think we will need that. But all right, anyway, what I'm trying to show now is if I go to the main URL now and I type in some random garbage and click search, notice that it got an error, we caught the error, and then we navigated to a new route up here. And that is how you do routes with the React Router. It's pretty straightforward. But let's say that you go to you search for a Pokemon that actually is found. Okay, so we want to go to a different route if we do find a Pokemon. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new route or pretend that we have one. And I will say Pokemon, and that will be /name. All right, so what's going to happen now is that is going to try to go to a new route called /Pokemon that we haven't created. Pokemon, and then Pokemon name. This is how you do path parameters with React Router. You do like these colons. It's very similar to Express. But instead of Pokemon not found, let's just go to a Pokemon component, which we haven't created yet. So let me just go ahead and create one. And let's see if my autocomplete will come up. Pokemon Hello World. Just for now, we're just going to print out Hello World. But the idea is I can go to that Pokemon component now. This auto import is not good in VS Code, or maybe it's just my PC. All right, so what are we trying to do? When I type in Pikachu now, it should navigate to Pokemon /Pikachu. And notice that it printed out Hello World here. Okay, so what we want to do now is inside that Pokemon component, we want to display the name of the Pokemon that we're at. And remember, we have the React Router parameters up here. So technically we could grab that mainly because we specified it here with this Pokemon name. So we can grab that with another hook called use params. Use params, yeah. And we can just grab Pokemon name when we're here. So instead of saying hello world, I could do an H1 and I could just put Pokemon name here. And now when we're at this route, it will just basically print out whatever that we typed in here. So if I type in garbage, it's going to print out that same here. So Pikachu, and we could also get this from state. If you remember in the Redux store, we set the Pokemon And we could do like the Pokemon name, which we're going to do in a second. Because we want to print out an image of the Pokemon. So if I type a Pikachu, I just want to see like what the response was. I'll type it here, Pikachu. All right, so we want to grab the sprites, and then I'm going to say front default. Okay, so we are trying to display an image, and that's going to be source equal to Pokemon.sprites.front default. And we don't actually have that yet. If you remember, we stored this on our state, right? So there's another hook you can use provided from Redux called useSelector. And that basically just takes a callback function and you need to return the state that you want. So Pokemon is equal to that. And now we should have access to display that image here. This is complaining that I don't have an alt. So if I just say Pokemon name here, and that should stop complaining. All right, what's going on? Cannot read sprites of null. Okay, so that is because you can't go to that route because we haven't loaded it. So if I type in Pikachu now, it should navigate to that route, and we did the request to the backend. We got that Pikachu data, and now we have the ability to display the sprites for that Pikachu. So the one thing that you probably notice is that when I refresh this page, though, it crashes because Pokemon is not defined. It's null. So what we definitely want to do is not render any of this until Pokemon is defined. So if Pokemon is defined, then you can go ahead and render that stuff. And I'm probably going to have to render this in a React fragment. So let me do that. And so now it'll prevent it from crashing. But it doesn't make sense because if someone were to bookmark this URL, Pokemon/Pikachu, it should still try to do the request to get that Pokemon information. But unfortunately, it's not set up that way. So let's try to do that. One way you could do it is using an effect. So when this component mounts, we could have this component itself try to make a request or dispatch that, that action creator. So when the component mounts, I could use a useEffect hook, and then I'm just going to say dispatch. I need to import dispatch. Let me do this. I'm going to say const dispatch is equal to useDispatch. And then here I can say dispatch. And then we want to dispatch a load Pokemon and pass it our Pokemon name. And we only want to do this if Pokemon is not defined. So if it's not already in state, we're going to go ahead and do that request, get it, and that should redirect us back to this page. Or, well, React will probably not do anything because we're already on this page. But now if I refresh this page, notice that it does do that one request to the backend, and we got our data here. I could enter like Charmander. That switches to Charmander or Charizard. All right, so that's about it. Let's see if I type in garbage, what happens? Unknown Pokemon, Pikachu, try again. So I could spend some time trying to style this up. In fact, let's just try to do that real quick. If I go and try to style the form, I could style the input on the form and say padding is 10 pixels. And then form button. Again, padding is 10 pixels. Outline none. Text align center maybe. Okay, I don't like how it's like set up here. So what I'm actually going to do is stick the form at the bottom of the page. So display absolute bottom 20 pixels, and the parent would have to be display relative. So now it should attach to the bottom, I think. Let's check this out. Why is it not? Form, display. Oh, position, not display. Position. Where's that? position absolute. So now it should be at the bottom. And then in terms of why it's not in the center, I guess technically you could do another flexbox approach. So if I go back to where I'm doing that, where am I doing that? Here, we have the form. I could just do another center. You know, I don't know why it's not auto-completing that. So I'll do center. And I think this should just achieve it for us since we already have that flexbox class defined to kind of put it in the center. All right, so now I can type in Pikachu. And that looks better. I can go back with my back button. This all stuff should probably be centered as well. And the text should probably be set to white. So since I'm doing H1s, I could probably just go ahead and do like H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Color is white. Text align is center. That'll fix that up. And then I'm going to do a utility class called like margin bottom 4. Actually, no, margin top. Let's see, margin top of 40 pixels. And I could attach that to Pokemon not found. All right, so it's a little bit better. And then the image probably needs to be centered too. So if I go back to my styles, I could do image, text align, center, I think. That should, hopefully that should center the image. I might have to do a display like relative or something, or position relative. Huh. Display inline. Okay, yeah. I'll do display inline block on that thing, and then that should center it. What's going on here? The image, display inline block, position relative. What's going on here? Why is it not... Oh, is it because I did the margin? 0 auto? Nope. Inline. Well, that's kind of embarrassing. How do I center that Charizard? Maybe I need to text align this. Let's see, text align center. Yeah, that's a quick little hack. Text align center. So obviously I'm just hacking stuff together. Like there's better ways that you can achieve this. So on this Pokemon class or component, I'm going to say text center, and that should actually center the image and everything. Yeah. I think that's about it. I mean, if you can think of anything that I should expand upon, be sure to leave a comment below. I mean, I could probably take this further and further. Like you have a bunch of information that comes back about the Pokemon. So again, you can go to the network tab and see that you get like all this Pokemon stuff. You get abilities, you get moves, species and stuff. So you can make this Pokedex really complex and involved if you wanted to, but I ain't got time for that. So that's up to you guys to do a PR add on to this if you want. But yeah, we covered some good stuff. We covered React router with the switch and the routes. We covered Redux Thunk. We got our reducers or action creators. We got async functions that change, or that, yeah, change the actual like URL based on if we get an exception or not. So hopefully this was a good overview of various different concepts, and you can see how the app gets larger and larger. You're going to have to kind of build up more components, more reducers. You're going to have different routes and nested routes, and yeah, just refactor as you go along and just keep trying to make your code better and better. So that basically wraps up this tutorial. If you enjoyed watching, be sure to like and subscribe. Otherwise, this code will be hosted on my GitHub repo, which will be in the description. Have a great day, y'all.